What's up, friends? This is Madurik, and in this video, I'm going to give you 4 main techniques to focus on improving so that you can get faster lap times and win races in the racing game Midnight in Wiami by World. So, before we dive in, I wanted to give credit where credit is due. I consider myself relatively new to sim racing, and I learned everything I'm going to teach you by Suelio Almeida, who is an online sim racing coach and in real life race car driver. He has many courses out, the main one being the Motor Racing Checklist, and it's going to teach you how to be faster on a racetrack. Doesn't matter if it's in a simulator, a racing game, or on a real racetrack in a real car. It also doesn't matter if you're using a steering wheel and pedals, a controller, or a keyboard. All the fundamentals are the same, and I've used these techniques in training to achieve, at the time of this video, being in the top 5 fastest lap times for any car or racetrack combination in Midnight in Wiami, and you could do the same. If you want to learn more, check out his site at suelioalmeida.ca. And with that, let's get into it. So here are the 4 techniques we're going to talk about in this video. Number 1 is braking. Number 2 is turning or cornering. Number 3 is going to be accelerating, and number 4 is consistency. So, races are won and lost on the turns. It's easy enough that once you're on a straightaway to hit the gas and go straight. We're not going to improve a lot of lap time there. However, once you get to a turn, how you enter into that turn, how you manage going through that turn, and then how you come out of that turn are going to be the 3 things where you'll find the biggest improvements in your lap times. And then, once we figure out the fastest way to get through any turn on a racetrack, doing it consistently so that every time we maximize the speed through each turn, that is how we will win races. So, before we get into live examples and showing you how to manage all these things, let's talk about some basic concepts of racing. So, let's now talk about the 4 main concepts that we want to understand about racing. Number 1 is grip or traction. And this is basically, when I turn, how effective does the car do what I want it to do? All right? Now, every car is set up differently and has different strengths and weaknesses in relation to the amount of grip or traction it has. But what you want to experiment with is knowing what are the limits of the car, and in general, the idea is that when we go slow, we have more grip or traction. We could make harder turns and tighter turns. The faster we go, the less grip we have, and so we need to take that into account for every turn and how fast we go into it and how each car that we're using responds. Okay, so the next concept we want to talk about is oversteer versus understeer. Now, oversteer is the situation where when you're in a turn, the rear end of the car turns more than the front of the car. You could think of this as fishtailing or drifting. Understeer is a situation where no matter how much you turn the wheel, the car won't turn anymore. Okay, you're kind of locked into moving in the same direction no matter what until you either slow down, brake, or something else happens. Now, at the time of this video and the build that we're on in Midnight in Wiami, all of the cars are much more understeery than they are oversteering. You can induce oversteer if you use the handbrake, but that's generally not going to make you faster through just about any turn. It is helpful if you're in a race situation and you need to do some maneuvers to get in front of someone or do something like that. But in general, we want to be focused on the concept of understeer as it relates to the cars in Midnight in Wiami when I'm making this video. And the goal is to learn what is the fastest speed I could get through a turn and still maintain control of the car and have it do what I want it to do. All right, the next concept that we want to talk about is the apex of a corner or a turn. And this is quite simply the innermost part of a line through a curve. Let's look at an image to illustrate this. Here we see a car going through a corner, and we can see that the apex is the innermost part of that corner. Now, the goal for most turns is to get as close as possible to that apex and then accelerate out of it. Now, I say for most turns because if you have a complex turn where multiple turns have to happen in a row, hitting each apex is not always going to be the fastest line or the fastest way to get through that section. But for the sake of keeping it simple and for the sake of this video, we're only going to be talking about single turns that we're going to deal with. And so for every turn, we want to make sure we understand where is the apex and make sure that we get as close to it as possible when we go through the turn. Okay, the last concept we're going to talk about before diving into some real-life examples is what's known as the racing line. And this is quite simply the fastest path to get through any part of the course, especially the turns. The way we're going to achieve this is by going through a turn using as much of the track as possible, where we can make a nice wide turn and still hit the apex and come out as fast as possible. Now, even if you're able to go through a turn at full throttle without braking, when you turn the wheel, it's going to slow the car down. So, to get faster through a turn, we want to use the wheel as little as possible. And that's where using as much of the track as possible, making a wide turn when possible, is what's going to give us more speed, okay? Now, most racing games and simulators have an option to turn on a visual guide for the best racing line possible. At the time of this video, Midnight in Wiami does not have that feature. I'm sure it'll be added in future builds. But it is very important to understand the optimal racing line without a visual guide, because it does change depending on the situation you're in. Now, if you're practicing by yourself, you're always going to be able to choose the fastest possible racing line to get through the course. However, when you're now in a race with somebody and you're neck and neck going into a corner, one of you needs to adjust your racing line because you're both not going to be able to make the optimal path through that corner. So you need to understand what is the optimal racing line depending on what I have to work with, all right? Very important concept. We'll break it down, so let's jump into the game and put all this into play and see how we can get faster. Okay, so now that we have an understanding of all the techniques we're going to work on and the basic concepts, now it's fun time. We're going to jump in and do some live examples here. So we're at the start screen here of Midnight in Wiami. You can see over here that we're in build 030. The other thing to note is that on the leaderboard here, we're going to do this combination of the Wiami 2010 and the track 9 lives. You can see how close these times are, right? Here I am right now in 5th place, but there's 4 different times that are all within tenths, if not 100ths of a second apart from each other. So every little bit of time that we could gain with technique is going to make a big difference, okay? So we're going to do solo mode, and we're going to use 9 lives to talk about and put into play what we just dove into. Okay, so let's go ahead and pick the Wiami 2010, and we're going to start off with the first turn, which is great. We got the starting line here that we're going to be on, and what we're going to do is talk about how we're going to enter in the first turn, which is a right-hander, okay? So let's go ahead and check out the turn. Now, we're talking about the racing line always. When I approach this turn, because it's a right-hander, I want to be on the left side as much as possible. So when I approach this turn coming up on the right, I want to position my car to be on the left as much as possible. That's going to allow me to use as much of the track as possible. Now, if I get up on it, we could see here that this little corner right here, that's the apex, okay? So this curve over here is going to be the apex of this turn, number 1, okay? So when I'm coming up onto this, I want to make sure that, number 1, I am coming up on the left side as much as possible, and then visually, I'm going to keep my eye on that corner apex, okay? So in other words, I want to make this line come like this and boom, hit it as close as possible and then shoot straight out as much as possible, okay? I don't want to hook around right and then keep turning right, because the second I could take more steering off and go straight, that's going to produce a faster racing line. So when I go through this, you could see that for this turn, I have plenty of straight afterwards, so I could work on getting that line to come out of it, but not need to turn too aggressively after the fact. Now again, as I'm turning real slow, I can make a real tight turn. The faster we go, we can't turn as hard. So coming off of this here, we're gonna hit this racing line, boom, and kind of head this way, and then slowly turn back around, okay? So that's where we're gonna approach the proper racing line, hit the apex, and come out of it, okay? Now, let's talk about some other things relative to the best way to approach making this. And when you practice, feel free to just keep repeating the same turn. If there is a specific turn that's giving you problems, you don't have to wait 2 minutes or 1 minute, whatever, to get around the whole track. Just come around like this, approach it again. Now, keep in mind, when I first start off a race here, I'm starting from 0. So when I first approach this turn, I'm going to be going slower than when I come around for the second lap. Because the second lap, I have this huge straightaway, and I'm going to be approaching this turn at a much faster speed. And I have to take that into account when I come into it, okay? So the next step is to then test out how much braking do I need to do. And again, this is going to depend on each car, in each corner. Now, in this case, when I come off of this, and in this car, I'm pretty sure I could just about take this corner without braking at all, okay? If I need to go slower, the first thing I'll do is see, can I just let off of the gas and coast and still make the turn without crashing, okay? Because again, if I hit the brakes, it's gonna slow me down more than I need to. So if I can make the corner with just coasting and not needing to brake, that's the first thing that I'm gonna test out trying to do. And then if I can't manage that corner with coasting, then I'll apply brake, all right? So the next question is, how much do I need to brake? And the thing also to mention about where we're currently at with Midnight in Wiami is that it's pretty much on or off with the brake, okay? I am on a wheel and pedal system. I could apply multiple points of pressure to the brake to increase it. And that is effective, but for the most part, it's pretty much on or off, okay? So when I approach a corner, I'm going to be making sure I know how long I want to brake for, because it's basically just all the way on and then off, all right? This can vary if you get very fine-tuned, but if you're on a controller and you just got a button, it's going to be on or off. Same thing with the keyboard. So unless you have a pedal where you could really adjust the amount of pressure, you're pretty much just going to be braking on or off. So the other huge thing to mention about braking is that you want to brake in a straight line when possible, okay? The best idea to keep it simple is brake first, let off the brake, and then turn. Do not focus on braking while turning, okay? It's an advanced technique. There is a technique called trail braking, which is basically the concept of letting off the gas while you turn to help give you traction and help with the weight balance of the car. But again, it's advanced technique. The physics aren't quite there yet with Midnight in Wiami. So for now, I would tell you, worry about braking in as much of a straight line as possible. When you're done with your braking, let off the brake, then turn, okay? Because if you brake and turn at the same time, you're gonna induce understeer and you're not gonna have control of the car. So you gotta practice every turn and knowing how much do I need to brake before I start turning, okay? Usually, to be honest, it's just a touch of the brakes very quickly and then I'm off, because that's when I know I could then take the turn as fast as possible. So coming into this turn, without braking, maybe I need to let off the gas and then turn and then get back on the gas, okay? Because the other thing that we talked about as a technique is accelerating. I want to get on the throttle as soon as possible after hitting the apex of a turn. Even if it's before the apex, it might be possible for me to get back on full power. It depends on the turn. But what's so critical to understand about the speed that you want to get through a turn is that the quicker you get on to full acceleration, the quicker your car will accelerate. And this makes a huge difference if you're going into a very long straightaway, okay? Because the longer that you go, the faster you're going to be overall. If I go through a corner with a race and let's say somebody is 3 car lengths ahead of me, okay? They're not that fast going back on the acceleration, but I'm very quick on the acceleration, okay? It might take me a little while down a straight line, but I'm going to be faster than him, and I'm going to gain on him if I came out of that turn quicker and got back on the accelerator quicker. So it's very important for every turn to get through it as fast as possible, but make sure for straightaways, a turn where you have a long straightaway, that you really make sure that you get back on full throttle as much as possible. Now, the second turn going through this course, again, a left-hander. But again, how am I going to line up for this turn? I'm going to make sure that I'm using as much of the track as possible. So if I back up here, we're going to come at this, and we are going to make sure that we hit the apex of this corner. Now, where it gets tricky here is, if I hit this apex, I have to keep this angle here, because you can see I have a landmark. Boom. If I hit that, obviously it's going to crash everything. So I can't hit this too hard to make sure that I can hit the apex, but then also get through it safely, okay? So coming to the right, we're going to turn in, hit our apex, and you can see the angle I'm at is going to come over where I just get onto this side of the course here. Again, using as much of the track as possible, okay? Going straight, we have a straightaway. I know that the next turn is a right-hander, so I'm going to line myself up here. Now, this next right-hander, right after this turn, is one of the longest straightaways of this course. So this turn is absolutely critical for me to get through it as fast as possible and get back on the accelerator as much as possible, okay? So when I'm coming through this, my racing line is going to be all the way to the left, turning, hit that apex, stay at this angle, and get back to straight is just in the nick of time where I'm not making any aggressive motions, because now I'm on this straightaway, okay? So, and on that turn, on this car, I don't need to use the brake, okay? I know that I can let off the throttle, and this car has enough grip and traction to make it through that right-hander without me needing to apply the brake at all, okay? That's, again, something that you need to test out for every car and turn. But I know from experience that this car can handle that turn and get grip all the way through it. So if we come through it again, okay, the other thing that's super, super important for consistency, which is the other technique we talked about, is making sure you could do it the same way every single time. How do we do that? We want to form points of reference, okay? This is both going to be for braking and accelerating, especially for braking. But what I've learned to do is know, let's take, for example, these palm trees on the left, okay? I know that when I get to this third palm tree right there on the left, if I'm at full speed, that third, around where I hit this third palm tree, that's where I let off the throttle so that I know I can make this turn. And then once I hit the apex, I know I can get back full speed on it, okay? Same idea when it comes to braking, okay? I'm going to have landmarks that I know where to brake, where to accelerate, where to turn. Now, in this one here, this is a really big, wide sweeping right turn. I could absolutely do this at full throttle. I do not want to brake. I do not want to coast. I keep the throttle all the way down through this turn. However, what I do as far as the racing line is that you can see that you got these palm trees, and there's one palm tree that's not lit up, okay? I know that when I get to that palm tree, I could start doing a very light turn to hit this apex right there, okay? Now I'm going to go straight because, again, I don't need to turn here, so keeping my car straight will help me go faster. There's the other apex I need to hit right there, okay? With big, wide, sweeping turns, though, you have a little bit more strategy that you could use because, you know, you have multiple places to kind of go, especially if you're neck and neck with another person, okay? Also, by the way, is to mention is that we do have the use of NOS, which is a way to get a boost. I'm not even going to talk about that as far as a technique in this video because you need to develop these skills without the use of NOS because it's only going to make you faster, but all the same things apply. When you go to use the NOS and the boost, you got to understand it's making you faster. So you got to adjust your brake times, your brake length, You got to adjust your apexes. All of those things are going to change because technically your car is just going to be faster, okay? You're going to also use it coming out of a turn to get accelerating quicker. But that's the most I'll say about NOS because, again, there's so much you could work on with basic technique that it's not even an issue to work on that right now. Now, coming into this turn, we have, if we want to take the shortcut, it's a left-hander, okay? And again, I need to know how fast can I take this turn without braking? Or if I need to brake, how much do I need to brake, okay? And I know through experience, if I'm going at full speed and I'm coming up here, okay, right when I start seeing these lights on the left-hander here, okay, it changes from that white to red. Right when I hit that red is when I let off the gas. Usually I could do it without braking at all. Sometimes I might need to just touch the brake a little bit and then I will turn left, okay? So here I'm gonna stay very right because this is my racing line. I wanna make a nice wide turn and come into this as straight as possible, especially because you want a nice clean entry into this construction zone, okay? If I come at this at an angle like this, if I came at this turn at an angle like this and I'm going really fast, my car cannot turn that quickly and still have grip. So I need to make a wide turn from far out and then shoot straight into it to get the optimal racing line, okay? So now that I'm in here, we're gonna go straight through it. And again, I'm gonna take this line here because I have a lot of room to turn, okay? Now I know that the next one is going to be another right-hander to go into this construction zone. My braking reference is going to be this second palm tree on the left, okay? I'm coming at this as full speed, and I know that right when I get to this second palm tree, I need to brake just for like a half a second, and then I could start turning, which will give me enough grip and traction to make that turn and get right back on full throttle. Once I'm on throttle, I know that I can keep it all the way through this section here. Now again, we have a really long straight. So it's very important to come out of that construction zone turn and keep my full throttle on. Because if I don't, and the other person I'm racing does, they're gonna be beating me at some point. If we're neck and neck and we come out of there at the same time, but he's on the accelerator quicker, he's going to eventually beat me on the straightaway because he's just going to be able to have more time to accelerate, okay? Next and last turn is a right-hander. I'm going to set myself up on the left here. When I see these cars right there, okay, usually, again, if I'm at full speed, okay, we see these cars here. Around then is when I let off the gas. Through experience, I know I don't need to brake here, but if I let off the gas there, just for a bit, it gives me enough traction to come through here, hit this apex, which is this little curb here, and then shoot straight out before I need to turn when I get to right there. Now I can straighten out and go, okay? And that is basically the fastest lap to get through this course that I've been able to do. So let's go through it at full speed and I'll talk through it, okay? We're gonna do one here and just start talking through it, okay? So, off the gas, little brake, turn right. Now, you can see that I missed the apex there. I was a little bit wide, okay? That is a place to gain maybe 1/100th of a second, maybe 1/10th of a second, okay? When I see that happen, I wanna look from afar and I wanna make sure I understand what am I setting out to do? Where's my next apex? So again, coming here, off the gas, start turning, boom, there's the apex. Now you can see that when I'm going slow, I could turn super quick and it's responsive. That's not going to be the case when I'm blasting it at full speed, okay? So coming in here, we got a right-hander. Off the gas for a second, back on the throttle, don't need to brake. Nice big wide turn to get the optimal racing line, okay? Coming up here, we got the dark tree. Start turning very lightly, hit the apex, go straight. Straighten out, hit this apex, make this turn. Okay, off the throttle, brake, turn left, and not enough. You can see how that was just too fast. So I need to go back and adjust for braking maybe an extra half a second. All right, and that will allow me to know when I can hit that turn and get through it clean. All right, so now that we're in here, we're gonna go as fast as possible, stay on the throttle. You can make that turn. You're gonna line yourself up here. Second palm tree, brake, come off the brake and turn. Again, never braking and turning at the same time, okay? It's gonna induce too much understeer. Coming out of here at full speed, we're gonna be moving and just get straight. I'm gonna get as far left as I can. Here's the cars, off the gas, take a right, back on the throttle. Okay, you can see how I can make that turn pretty well. I missed the apex a little bit. Now I'm coming at this full speed, okay? So now I need to brake a little bit, turn right, and again, I was late on the apex, I was at full speed, and I missed it, and I hit the side. So it's those little tweaks that you want to make to where your reference points are to when you brake that will allow you to get faster and faster. All right, so let's keep going and just talk through this a little bit more. Hopefully you're getting the idea here, though. Third palm tree, off the throttle, take a right. There's the apex, nice and wide turn, back on the throttle as soon as possible, okay? So we got the dark tree coming up. We're gonna lightly turn right. We're gonna hit our apex, straighten out. Another apex here on the right. We got the red lights coming up, brake, left-hander, there we go. That was a little sloppy, but better. Full throttle, we can take this big wide turn, line ourselves up here, second tree, brake, left or right turn, back on the throttle, stay on the throttle, make a nice big wide turn to line ourselves up on the left hand. Okay, coming up here, we have the cars, and now we can let off the gas, start turning right. Oh, too quick. So again, you got to adjust and make sure you understand where you're at. And again, when you're practicing, you're going to be working on just solo getting the optimal line. But when you're in an actual race, your optimal line is going to change depending on how close you are to the other person. All right, so there we go. Hopefully this video was helpful, and hopefully it'll give you some tips to practice so that you can get faster. And I look forward to seeing you work your way up on that leaderboard and also doing some racing in Midnight in Wiami. If you have any questions or comments, definitely please leave them below this video, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Later.